Greetings and welcome to the latest town meeting program as of Monday, July 14th, 2025. That's the day to which you are attuned to your radio, if you are tuned to your radio. And if perhaps you are listening to this on the delay, well, welcome to Cordova TV, the YouTube channel where talk shows become podcasts, because there's clearly a difference, which is something I have no idea what the difference is. But is it just the medium, or is it the... I'd have to look it up. But I'm glad you're here, because we have a good conversation to share with you today. And we're able to do it thanks to Cordova Wireless Communications, longtime sponsor of the town meeting talk show when it used to be every day just because, which I think we all figured out was a waste of everybody's time, so now we do it on demand. Cordova Wireless is your local provider of wireless data services, and they are also the provider of your local talk show. And of course, with their local office and local folks to help, you always know everything is going to be what's right for a Cordovan wireless data user. This conversation today is with Jodi von Brandt of the Alaska Center for Resource Families. And this was one of those situations where that entity was asking for a PSA, just regular 30-second announcements to run. And while we certainly say yes pretty much every time somebody wants one of those, this one just kind of felt like we ought to dig a little deeper. So I asked if we could do a program with somebody to get a little more into the weeds here. And this was an informative conversation. There are aspects of it that I found fascinating as a layperson who thought, we have friends who have adopted and who have participated in fostering young people. So you think you know about a thing, and then, wow, there's a lot more to learn. So this was really illuminating. The Alaska Resource Center, or the Alaska Center for Resource Families, exists for Alaskans considering or already involved in adopting and or fostering youth. And they're there during the whole process, from some of your first little stick a toe in the water, trying to find out more about it, clear through after you're already participating and need some support or just somebody to talk to. ACRF does it all. And as you'll hear, Jodi has some particular experience in the area of fostering, especially, which is what most of the program is about. It's also, ACRF also is involved in adoption, but most of this has to do with fostering. And she is uniquely qualified, as you'll hear, like I said, if you stick around and hear what she has to say. So that's what's on the agenda. Jodi von Brandt of the Alaska Center for Resource Families, our guest, and a really good guest on today's town meeting. So Jodi, nice to have you with us, and I always think it's kind of nice to get to know who we're talking to first. So how did you come to be interested in this area that the Alaska Center for Resource Families covers?
Well, I was actually a foster kid when I was very young in the state of California. And then as I became an adult, I also became a foster parent. And I'm a trainer at heart. So this was a perfect fit for me to join Alaska Center for Resource Families and help train and support our resource families in the state.
Boy, I should say so. You basically have had experience with it from every angle. That's yes. Remarkable. How about an overview of what the entity does? And how did it, do you know how it came to be, for example, and what is its focus throughout the state?
Yeah, well, I believe it came to be because there was a lack of support. We know that foster parents are in short supply, and largely because the state is The system of Office of Children's Services is complicated and bureaucratic, and there's a lot of red tape, and it's really hard to do that work when there's little support. So our agency was born out of a need to support those folks so that we had foster caregivers for the kids in the state who needed it. And largely what we do is we train and support folks all over the state of Alaska who are caring for kids in state's custody, whether they're a licensed foster parent, an unlicensed relative who's taken placement, or if they're pre or post-adoptive folks as well. We support folks who are caring for kids regardless of their situation.
Now that's interesting. So is most of the focus on existing parents or existing families, or do you also help introduce people who could become prospective foster families?
Yeah, we actually do participate in a lot of recruitment efforts trying to pull in foster families, and we do kind of talk folks through what that might look like and what their different options are if they're not ready to jump right in and become a full-time foster parent. We do train folks who are still just thinking about it. We offer orientations for folks who just want a little more information but aren't quite sure yet. And we do a lot of outreach and working with folks who maybe have thought about it and it's time and they think they want to go down that road. And we kind of work with them about what that process looks like and get them through that. And then we're there to support them along the way.
Wow. What a great asset. And are these, is there a fee for any of these services, or are you just there for them for free, essentially?
There's absolutely no fee for any of our services. Everything that we do is free. We don't charge in any way for any of our services. And we have a wealth of training and support and resources available for folks. Our mission is just to make sure that these kids have safe people to be with while their parents are working their things out.
And are you also involved in the adoption angle of things too, or is this pretty much limited to just fostering?
No, we actually provide pre- and post-adoptive support. We also work with an agency called Heart Gallery through Beacon Hill. If folks are only interested in adopting through OCS, through the Office of Children's Services, there's a path for that. So if folks really don't want to do the foster care part, but they're looking to just adopt, we support that as well. And once your adoption is final, our services do not end. We will support those relationships to the end. So even after the adoption is final, we know those kids have issues that come up down the road, and we're there for those folks along the way as well.
Wow. What a remarkable thing to have. See, this is why I was joking with you before we got started that, we get PSA requests all the time, but every now and then one jumps out at you that kind of says, I think we ought to get into the weeds a little more with this one. And
yeah.
It was. I'm glad to have been right in that case. So, Jodi, what kinds of training and support do you guys go by ACRF for short, or?
We do.
Okay, so it's the Alaska Center for Resource Families, and maybe let's explore that. What is it that defines a resource family?
So, a resource family is going to be a licensed foster parent, an unlicensed relative who's taken placement of a relative in state's custody, or it could even be someone who has taken guardianship of a child in custody. So largely it's folks who are caring for kids that are currently in the custody of the state. Those are resource families, and they look different. They're as different as families and children are. So whatever that means, it can be a licensed person or an unlicensed person, can be pre-taking placement or post-taking placement. It can be in any spot along that journey.
Yeah. Well, but obviously, as you said before, it sounds like while there is a definition for what that is, that the people that you will help goes well beyond that. So let's get into what the different types of training and support that ACRF offers.
Sure. So we offer our big kind of flagship training is called Core Training for Resource Families. And this is kind of an in-depth training about what it is to be a foster parent. It talks a lot about trauma, the different kinds of trauma, and how trauma can actually alter a child's development and the way their brain develops. We talk a lot about what working with the state looks like. We talk about behaviors that you might see in some of these kids who've experienced trauma. We talk about ICWA, the Indian Child Welfare Act, as there is a large number of Alaska Native kiddos in care. We talk about what it is to work with the birth family, because we all want to support these families so they can have their kids back, right? We're not in the business of taking people's children away. So we talk about supporting and fostering the whole family. So that training is a large training, and it's a very good overview of what it's going to look like for you as a foster parent. But we also offer a lot more specific trainings. So if you, for example, take placement of a child and then you bring that child into your home, and a couple months down the road, you suddenly find this child's been hiding food in their room, stashing it under their bed, and now you have ants, and you don't know what this is about, you can call me and I will explain to you why that's happening and what things you might do to help alleviate that. We have training available on things like ADHD, on fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, on kids who are showing sexually acting out behaviors. We have training available on how to parent creatively, because we know that we can't use corporal punishment with kids in state custody. So we provide parents with alternate methods for managing behaviors and putting rules and boundaries in place at home. We also have training in terms of how, if you are a relative, and for example, say you're a grandma and you've taken custody of your grandchild, well, now your relationship with your child is going to change, because you're no longer grandma. Now you're that child, your grandchild's parent, in essence. Right. So we have trainings about setting new boundaries with that person. You have to respect the rules of the Office of Children's Services, or they might move that child for safety reasons. So you have to now set new boundaries and redefine your relationship with your own child. And that's not easy for a lot of folks. So we have training around those kinds of issues. We have all kinds of training. You couldn't even begin to list them all.
Yeah, I mean, just the things that you've talked about are things that, you know, I just as a layperson, I never would have considered would need to be part of trying to develop a relationship that's going to work. The one that you mentioned there before about the idea of the possibility of returning a child back to a family that maybe that child had to come out of for some reason, that you've thought of that facet of it also is, you know, that's fascinating. And I mean, and there again, that makes you such a great resource for the state. Do you, how much work have you done in Cordova, if any, or just maybe our general area down here?
Yeah, I've been to Cordova a few times. I've come and partnered with the ICWA specialist there. We've done some trainings and some orientations trying to help people decide whether or not being a foster parent is right for them. I myself have been there, I think, 2 or 3 times, and folks from the Office of Children's Services come out there and join me to put on those orientations in Cordova there.
And has there been much need for fostering in our area? I mean, it's kind of a weird way to ask the question, but have your services been in demand?
Yes, we actually have currently 1 licensed foster home in Cordova. And so if a child in Cordova comes into state's custody, they're likely going to be sent elsewhere to be put in a foster home. So we don't like to see that happen. We want kids to stay in their community. It's already traumatic enough for a child to be taken out of their home by the state and put in another home with strangers. We don't also want them to have to switch schools or lose their neighborhood or not have connection to their extended family members or be in a familiar area where their culture is with them. Yeah. So we're always trying to bring, to recruit foster parents, especially in the more rural areas, so these kids aren't having to go to a completely different part of the state, and then having visits with their biological parents becomes very difficult when that happens.
Sure. Yeah, you don't want to do that over Zoom if you can avoid it, right. Obviously. So, well, so if someone has thought about this before, well, or maybe even, well, let's break that down. If someone, let's say someone has never considered this before, and they are hearing about the need in Cordova, and it maybe, lights a little spark like, geez, I never thought about this, but maybe this could be a very a fulfilling thing that I could do for the community and for kids and that sort of thing, what would you say to somebody who's maybe just recently or even now waking up to the possibility?
Well, I would say there are some hard questions you absolutely have to ask yourself. We know that this is not easy work, but we also know that it's incredibly impactful. You can actually change the trajectory of a child's life if you choose to do that. But it is difficult, and it is sometimes frustrating because you're working with a very broken system, and we all know that. But I would say if you have a heart for this and you think you want to do it, call me and talk it through with me, because I've been on both sides of this and I understand what the system is like and how it works. I can answer any questions that a person might have. I can hold their hand and walk them through the application process. I can be there for them every step of the way. I'm always just a phone call away, and my job exists solely to support you in that endeavor. So you would not have to do it alone.
Well, that's it. And I mean, that's a key. First off, to realize that, as you said, that it is a potentially complicated thing, and that it's not something you want to do on a whim, that you'll provide the warnings. Warnings is a strong word, but the cautions and the background and all of that. So you increase the chances for success. And then the fact that you're there to be helpful along the way, which could be one of those things that kind of maybe helps tip the scales for somebody that's on the fence. Now, if you had somebody that has thought about this and just is needing that little extra incentive, would you say very similar things to them that you would to somebody who's just sort of now discovering that's a possibility, or would it be a little different approach?
Well, I would say to someone who's thought about it, what has held you back? What are your concerns? What is it that's kept you from taking that leap? And let's look at that, and let's see if there are ways for me to support those concerns. Usually, this is not something people jump into. Usually, this is something people think about and talk about and mull over for quite some time. It's a big commitment to bring a child into your home that you don't know, especially if you already have children. And I'm going to be very honest with the people that I am working with. I don't sugarcoat it. I'm not going to say it's all sunshine and rainbows, because that does not help anyone.
Right.
I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be truthful, and I'm going to tell you exactly what you might be looking at. And then I'm going to offer to provide supports for that. But the truth is, if you've thought about it and you haven't done something, I'm going to ask you what's holding you back.
Okay. Well, and again, the comprehensiveness of what you offer, I think is very compelling. You mentioned, and this is kind of a tangent, but I mean, because you're so knowledgeable in this area from so many different angles, it seems like this kind of a system, the way that our culture talks about, the children are our future. I mean, I don't know how many you hear that phrase so often that it almost kind of makes your eyes roll. But I mean, it clearly is a priority that I hope is not that the culture doesn't just give lip service to. So if that's the case, if kids are important, we hear about it from talking about the education standpoint in so many different ways. They even, when they're talking about the national debt or something, we're passing it on to our children. So if children are the priority that we believe that they are, why is this fostering system so broken, as you said, and as a lot of people said? I mean, it's something that almost everybody knows. Do you have any insight into that?
Well, I can give you my opinion. Here's the thing is, when I have a child, that's my child, and I have a right to raise that child however I see fit. But if I am not keeping my child safe and someone feels that they need to step in and do that, there's a whole lot of legality around that. There's a lot of rights that a parent has. And if the state is going to step in and take my child, boy, they better be able to prove that they need to do that, and they better follow the letter of the law so that my rights as a parent are not violated. And that's difficult when you're talking about how should you raise your child, what's okay and what's not okay. There's a large gray area there, right? It's very subjective. So what's okay for me may not be okay for you. But the law doesn't say we need to be perfect parents. The law doesn't even say we need to be good parents. The law says we need to keep our children safe. And that's the only reason that someone has a right to come in and get involved with my family, is if I'm not keeping my children safe. So you could see how that could become very convoluted. When can they step in? Why do they step in? How do they step in? And at what length do they have power? At what point do they have a right to terminate my parental rights? Mm-hmm. How does that get determined, and by whom? So it is very complicated when you're talking about intervening in a child's life and taking them out of their home. There's so many laws and rules and regulations around that. Of course, the system is going to be very confusing and complicated. It's just not an easy answer for anyone.
And is it is the problem with placing kids that there just aren't? Is it a supply and demand thing? I mean, there just aren't enough parents out there, foster parents, willing to try and take on that role? Largely,
yes.
Yeah.
I mean, most people don't want OCS involved in their life, right? I tell people it's like parenting in a fishbowl. You have all these people watching you, and all these people are you feel like you're being judged. And as a foster parent, you don't get to make the decisions. You don't have custody of that child.
Yeah.
The state has custody, and they make the decisions, and you have to go along with it regardless of how you feel about that or what you think is right. So it's a very difficult job. So we don't have enough foster parents, and we don't have a lot of folks that are willing to step into that role and to run through that gambit. And I will tell you this too. The goal is to send these kids home. The goal is to support the whole family so the birth parents can correct whatever the issue was that brought them into care in the first place. And so when you send these kids home, it hurts. You come to love them. You come to care about them. And sometimes you feel like sending them home is not the best thing for them, but that's not your call to make.
Yeah.
So that's very difficult for folks to volunteer for.
And yet, I would imagine that by going through the training that you have been talking about with ACRF, that you can prepare people and have them able to kind of get ready for that part, so it doesn't. I mean, it still is maybe going to come an emotional shock, but maybe not so much as a planning or a psychological, like a cognitive shock.
Yeah. Yes, we do provide training around that grief and loss, and we do provide support around those times when the kids are leaving the home and going back to their birth family. And some of these foster parents have had these children since they were babies, so they feel like, I'm the only parent this kiddo knows. That's a huge blow to the heart. So, yeah, so we're there for training. We're there to explain when that's going to happen, what that's going to look like, and we're there for you through that process. We also advise folks, if you need to take a break and not take the next placement right away, do that. Give your family time to grieve that loss, but also know that you gave that child something. You showed them a different way to live their life. You showed them a different opportunity for their future. You made an impact on that child while you had them in your care. And that's something they will carry with them throughout their lives. So even though it hurts and even though it's hard, it is truly, truly a gift. And it impacts that child in ways that nothing else can.
And again, you know that from being a foster child and a foster parent. So you've seen this whole. I mean, as you think back on being fostered, is that sort of how you are able to come away feeling about the people that cared for you, that they gave you a shot to get where you are?
Yeah, so for me, it was a different experience. I did not have a great experience in foster care. I was actually placed with a family that the family spoke a different language than me. They were kind people, but I was very young and I didn't understand any of it. It was frightening, and it was, I couldn't communicate with folks. However, when I was taken out of my mother's custody and placed in this home, I was safe and I was cared for. And I don't know where I would have been if I'd not had that opportunity. And they were able to keep my siblings and I together rather than splitting us up.
Oh, wow.
So that made a big impact too, because there were 4 of us. It was a big ask. Yeah. So my experience in foster care was not really negative, but it wasn't super positive either. However, it was a safe, healthy place for me to be. until my mother could get us back, and she did.
Wow. Okay. So, I mean, you made that point earlier about how, all families are different. They have different dynamics. Obviously, fostering has a lot of different dynamics too. And even if maybe it doesn't feel great to a kid at the time, it still provides a necessary gap in a tough situation that enables them to go forward and be successful. And you're obviously an example of that. As a foster parent yourself, what have your experiences been like?
Well, I became a foster parent because a relative came into custody. Mm-hmm. And so I got a phone call out of the blue that said, hey, this kiddo's in care. Do you want them? If you don't want to take them, they're going to go into the system and into some stranger's house. And of course, I felt compelled. I almost felt obligated. I can't let my family member go to strangers. Yeah. So I became a foster parent overnight without ever having thought about it or looked into it. And I had very young children of my own at home. So it was difficult because I was not prepared. I didn't have support at the time. And it was very difficult to navigate the system by myself as a young single parent with my own 3 children. But I brought that kiddo into my home. We formed a great relationship. I saw that child thrive with the structure and the consistency that I had in place in my home. He missed his mother, so we did often make efforts to visit. We did phone calls, and back then we didn't have Zoom, but we would drive to go see her. And years later down the road, that child, about 15 years later, called me up and said, you know what, I just want to say thank you. Huh. Thank you for being there for me during that time. It was hard. I know I was tough on you because I was angry that I was taken from my mom, but you showed me what it looked like to be in a functional family and to be loved and to be seen, and I never forgot that. So even all those years later, that child was impacted by his time in my home. Mm.
Well, and you didn't have, if I understood you right, you didn't have an asset like ACRF that you could call on back then?
Oh, no, I wish I had had that kind of help and support. I really didn't have any. At least I didn't know of any at the time. And after that first placement, I took another placement that I was not related to because, well, I was already licensed. And so I wanted to help more kiddos. And at that time, I didn't learn of any other resources like what we offer today either.
Yeah. Well, so it must be very rewarding then. I mean, you've got to feel like the center has an important role, and I assume some success stories, people that you've recruited and that you've helped through tough times. There's got to be a list of those somewhere.
Oh, yeah. We have several. We have some foster parents who've been doing this for 25 years. We ask some of our more seasoned and experienced foster parents to come and speak to new foster parents who are just getting started. We have a lot of families, and they look different all over the state, but we have families who take in only teens, because those are harder to place for a lot of folks. And so they'll help teens learn how to get a license or apply for a job or open a checking account and help them prepare to step out into the world on their own. We have folks that take young ones and they just want young kids because they have young kids of their own at home. We have families who've done just respite care. They only take other people's foster children so they can have a break or go on vacation. Oh. So they're just taking kids for maybe the weekend. So we have folks that aren't having kids in their home full time, but they're still fostering and helping other foster parents. So it can run the gambit. It can look a lot of different ways.
That's fascinating. I didn't even think about that. Somebody could play a role to just provide a break for another family that's kind of doing it full time. See, this is why I wanted to talk to you about this, because there's so much more to this than somebody could possibly know just based on how you see it portrayed in movies or talked about in an article or something like that. So, is there anything else, Jodi, that you'd like to be able to communicate to folks that we maybe haven't covered so far?
I would like to just say that, if this is something that speaks to you on any level, we're here to answer any questions that you have. We have a plethora of information on our website. We have an orientation that you can jump on and watch there, or you can join one of our orientations over Zoom or on the phone, and that can answer some of your questions. But truly, Alaska Center for Resource Families is an incredible resource for folks who are thinking about this, and we are available to help anyone, anytime in the state of Alaska. They can pick up the phone, give us a call, ask us questions, and that's what we're here to do, is to answer questions, support people through the process, help parents managing behaviors, and all of the things in between. I will say this, as someone who was a foster child, I can't stress enough the need, and I can't stress enough the impact that you can have on a child, even if they're in your home for just a few weeks. Just seeing a different way of life can teach a child that they have a choice. They don't have to grow up and repeat the cycle of abuse, as we've heard for years. They learn by being in a home very different from their own that they have a choice about how they live their lives as adults, and there is nothing more impactful than that. And if you're thinking about it at all, please reach out to us. We'd love to talk to you.
Well, and to think about that, too, for that prospective person or couple or family, that obviously there's no obligation in reaching out. It's not like people are going to come banging on your door. If you just want to find out more about it, to place that call or look at some of the resources, and then, have something to talk about with your family and kind of think about it. And you may decide it's not right. You may decide it's a fabulous, not a fabulous adventure in the sense of, like you said, rainbows and marshmallows, but an important way to make the world a better place. I want to be now, since you've encouraged people to reach out to you, I want to make sure we know every possible way to do that. So what are the ways to get in touch with the Alaska Center for Resource Families?
Sure, you can start with our website, which is ACRF.org. You can complete the Contact Us form on that website. You can reach out to me directly. Our phone number is 907-376-4678. And you can email any one of us on staff, and our email addresses are available on our website as well.
All right. Well, Jodi, it's been a fascinating conversation. I mean, one of the most intriguing, I think, that I've had in a while. With no disrespect to our previous many guests, they're always good conversations, but this is a real eye opener. And I wish you all success, and I hope that everything that you're trying to do works out, because you're exactly right. It's a very critical service. Thank you so much again for being with us.
Thank you.
Well, I hope you found that conversation as fascinating as I did having it. I feel like I really learned a lot from talking to her, and I'm glad to have had the chance to share it with you. Jodi von Brandt of the Alaska Center for Resource Families. Again, the website is acrf.org. The phone number she gave was 907-376-4678. But if you remember acrf.org, then you not only can get the phone number, but you can also get email information and lots of details to help you learn more about this, or who to contact if you've got specific questions and curiosities that you want to investigate. And again, the fact that she has been a foster child and a foster parent, in addition to getting the education that it takes to be able to have a position like this, that just made for a really fascinating conversation. Those of you, by the way, that are listening to the YouTube version of this, I'll have the contact information for Jodi in the description of the video. I always hesitate to say video because it's just a slate with audio. But, this is a radio station, so audio is what we do. But so scroll down, you'll find it there someplace down below the video screen. And if you hearing about this makes an amazing difference in your life or somebody you share it with, and let me point out again, a big part of why we put all our shows on that YouTube channel Robbie made for us is so these programs can be shared more broadly outside of Cordova or shared with somebody who lives here but might not have heard the program and might be interested in the topic. So feel free to share it around. And I want to thank our sponsor again, Cordova Wireless Communications, who makes this whole process possible and benefits the community, not only with the local hiring and the local infrastructure that they put in, but all those extra dollars they bring in from outside. And that couldn't happen if Cordova Wireless and CTC together were not the kind of operation that they are. But because of how they're set up, there's all this outside investment that comes in and not only keeps our rates from running away and being completely crazy, but also facilitates construction of new projects that really, in a lot of ways, keep us on the kind of cutting edge that you almost don't see in some larger communities. And it's been fascinating to talk with Cordova Wireless and CTC folks over the years to hear about how this process has unfolded and how we've been able to have really good telecommunications infrastructure that you just didn't see in other communities our size and even some of them larger. So I'm glad they're here. I'm glad they brought you today's show. Thank you for tuning in. And those of you who are used to hearing certain other informational programming in the 10 a.m. hour, we've got that all stacked up and ready to go for you. So it's on the way. Big thanks again to Jodi, and thanks to all of you who tune in to KLAM or visit Cordova TV on YouTube. Hope you have a great day. Thanks for joining us.